Hello, I'm Clark Crawford, and welcome back to Clark Crawford Sports. Today, I'm going to be giving you a short recap of some Week 16 action, along with the Week 17 preview. But before I get into my recap, hit the like button, also leave me your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, subscribe to my channel. With that being said, let's dive into the portion of the video for your Week 16 recap. First off is the Steelers upset the Bengals with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. His bright red nose brought 2 passing touchdowns and a Christmas miracle win to the city of Pittsburgh. Apparently, all the Steelers needed was a Rudolph to win some football games. Notable games included the Browns beat the Texans 36-22. Joe Flacco threw for 368 yards with 3 scores, along with Amari Cooper, who was unguardable in this game, set the Cleveland Browns single-game receiving record with 265 yards. What a hell of a performance by Amari Cooper. This game was the Carolina Panthers almost won a game. Bryce Young almost looks like an NFL-ready QB for maybe the first time all season. Bryce finally put his big boy child-sized pants on, imitating what would be, maybe a C.J. Stroud performance. And, well, for you Panther fans, maybe he can prove this is not a one-week wonder type of performance. Now, I know I'm dogging on the Panthers, but the Panthers have sucked for most of the year, and Bryce Young hasn't looked good, so, oh well, too bad for you Panther fans. Moving on, the Lions won the NFC North for the first time ever, including their first division title since 1993, before I was born, when they were part of the NFC Central. On the Vikings side of that football game, they suffered 2 brutal injuries. One to T.J. Hockenson, their star tight end. He tore his ACL along with MCL. And then, to make matters worse, Jordan Addison left the game with an ankle injury. 2 brutal blows to the Vikings' slim playoff chances as they sit at 7-8 with their loss on Sunday. The Cowboys lost the second consecutive game, this time to the Miami Dolphins. The Cowboys were up and down on offense, and their defense wasn't good enough to bring home the win, as it was a low-scoring game, which Miami won on a last-second field goal. On the Cowboys side of things, it's another loss. They have a chance to rebound against the Detroit Lions on Saturday night in a primetime game, which I'll talk about later. And also, they lost the NFC East lead to the Philadelphia Eagles, who had lost 3 in a row. All Dallas had to win was win some games and not drop 2 in a row, and they'd be sitting in the driver's seat in the NFC East. But Dallas lost again, so for you Cowboy fans, your season's starting to look like it's going down in flames. Now for the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle, their superstar receiver, exited the game, which is now being reported as a high ankle sprain, which will likely sideline him for the remainder of the regular season. And depending on how severe the injury is, because high ankle sprains can be tricky, sometimes they can be 2 weeks, sometimes they can be 4 weeks, and I've even seen them last as long as 6 to 8 weeks, just depending on how severe it is. So it's a big loss for Miami, as it could also hurt them in the postseason. So Miami, if I were you, I'd be pushing hard for that 1 seed, so Jalen Waddle has an extra week to rest up for a potential deep postseason run for the Dolphins. Moving on, the Christmas Day had 3 games, as I mentioned in my Week 16 preview last week. So if you have not seen that video, I'd highly recommend you go watch it now. It's a good one. Starting with those Christmas Day games, the Raiders upset the Chiefs 20-14. The Kansas City Chiefs are not defending their Super Bowl crown to this point very well. They don't look like the dominating same Chiefs they've looked like over the past 4, 5, 6 years, maybe even 7 years, so up to at least 5 years. Patrick Mahomes is looking kind of like a rookie out there. I mean, I know there's been a lot of drop passes and just miscues and missed opportunities for Kansas City, but I highly expected, Kansas City might have a slump, a little Super Bowl hangover, but for it to last this long in the season, that's a major concern for you Chiefs fans. Now, with the win, what's even more concerning for the Chiefs is if the Raiders win the final 2 games, along with the Chiefs losing their final 2 games, the Raiders would become the division champs in the AFC West. I'm all about chaos, and me personally, I'm kind of sick of Kansas City, so go Raiders, and I hope the Chiefs lose. Second of 3 Christmas games featured the Eagles ending their 3-game losing streak to the Giants. Against the Giants, the Eagles' struggling offense showed some signs of life, but they still have a ways to go before breaking out of their couple of months of sluggish play. As I keep mentioning, it looks like losing their defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator has really hurt the offense and defensive sides of the ball. Who would have guessed? There's been a ton of struggles there, but luckily for the Eagles, they're 11-4, and they're the number 2 seed in the NFC. So good for you Eagles fans. You're still right there in the middle of it. And good luck the rest of the season. Giants fans, your season's been over for a while. You had a little Tommy DeVito magic, something to be excited of. But let's be real. You knew it wasn't going to last. Tommy DeVito, he might end up being a solid NFL player, but he's unlikely to be a star in this league. The Ravens dominated the 49ers, and that's putting it generously. Lamar Jackson and the defense played lights out all night. The only thing that went wrong for Lamar Jackson is he got tripped up by the referee, total accident, and got sacked for what was called a safety. Other than that, if you take even counting those 2 points, the Niners were abysmal all night long. So the only thing that could stop Lamar was the referee tripping him by accident in the end zone. Things went so poorly for the 49ers on Monday night that Brock Purdy was benched after 4 interceptions. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Brock Purdy was so bad, I just needed 1 touchdown from him to win one of my fantasy football matchups. Unfortunately, he got me none, and I lost. So that's a side note. If you're looking for fantasy advice, hit me up on my channel or hit me up on my Twitter, which is now X, which is also in the link in my profile, so check that out as well if you need any fantasy football advice. I'm in 2 fantasy football championship games myself, so if you need fantasy advice, free fantasy advice, come shoot me a message and I'll give you some advice. Now back to the 49ers. Luckily for the 49ers, this week, as it's a major rebound week for them, they have a juicy matchup with the 4-11 Washington Commanders this upcoming Sunday. That'll do it for my Week 16 recap. Now on to Week 17. Starting with my Week 17 preview, before I get into the games, I want to quickly mention some breaking news as of yesterday, which was Wednesday, as I'm recording this video on Thursday. The news is 3 starting quarterbacks have been benched. Sam Howell benched for Jacoby Brissett. That's not so bad. Jacoby Brissett's been a starter in this league before. Tommy DeVito's been benched for Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor is an up-and-down guy. He can maybe win you a couple games, but the Giants' season is long over, so we're not going to talk about that one much. And the big news is, of the benchings, Russell Wilson has been benched for Jarrett Stidham, former Baylor and Auburn quarterback. Also, Russell Wilson, expanding on that news, is expected to be cut from the Broncos in March. It sounds like a messy situation there in Denver. I'm just glad I'm not a Broncos fan because they made a huge mistake with that contract. It continues to be a disastrous trade for the Broncos, made less than 2 years ago, trading for Russell Wilson. Yikes. Also, in other news, Rookie of the Year C.J. Stroud practiced for the first time yesterday on Wednesday since suffering a concussion more than 2 weeks ago against the Jets. A good sign we see Stroud back in action this week against the Titans. So good news, Texans fans. We're going to start Week 17 with what is most people are calling the game of the week. The 11-4 Miami Dolphins traveling to Baltimore to face the 12-3 NFL best record Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore can clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC with a win over the Dolphins. This is an exciting matchup because you also have several MVP candidates. Tua Tagovailoa, likely a top 10 finisher. A guy who deserves some more love but probably won't get it in the voting, Tyreek Hill. And, of course, the likely MVP frontrunner as of today, Lamar Jackson. There's a lot to desire in this matchup. I think it will be a low-scoring affair between 2 of the best teams in the league. We'll see who comes out on top. Moving on to the Cowboys, as I mentioned earlier in the video, have lost 2 in a row, headed into a Saturday night primetime showdown where the Lions come to the state of Texas. The Cowboys are undefeated, 7-0 at home, and the Lions certainly have potential to pull off an upset in my mind, as I'm calling this and considering this an upset because of the Cowboys' perfect home record. The years, more times than not, the Cowboys are much better home team than they are road team. So with that being said, this is an intriguing game between two squads who both have Super Bowl aspirations. Jared Goff versus Dak Prescott, not some miserable quarterback matchup between two quarterbacks who have started 3 games in their career or a bunch of backup scrubs. No, this is Jared Goff versus Dak Prescott, Saturday night primetime. Sign me up for what I'm expecting to be a high-scoring, good game between two of the top teams in the NFC. Next up on the preview slate is a game between the Raiders and the Colts. Las Vegas comes into this one, pulling off what arguably could be one of the biggest upsets of the season against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road at Arrowhead. The Raiders come into this game at 7-8. As I mentioned earlier in the video, they still have a chance to win the division, while the Colts support an 8-7 record. Both squads are fighting for their playoff lives, as both have impressed me staying alive this long in the playoff hunt. I thought both maybe are still fighting at maybe 7-8 or 6-9, but both of them, as the Raiders are 7-8 and the Colts have a winning record at 8-7, like I said, they both impressed me. So kudos to both of those teams for continuing to fight with a lot of criticism against both of them coming into the year. Both teams are in desperate need of a win. This has the makings to be a tough, hard-fought game, making it one I'll keep my eyes on to see who brings home the win and stays alive, as I mentioned, in the playoff hunt. The tightly contested NFC South race for first place is on the line between the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints have won 2 of their last 3 and have looked better as of late, while the Buccaneers are red-hot winners of their last 4. The Buccaneers, in my mind, I think they're the hottest team in the NFL right now. The Buccaneers' offense over those 4 games has arguably been the best in the league, led by Baker Mayfield, Rachaad White, and Mike Evans, 3 of the best fantasy players out there. As I mentioned, ask me for fantasy advice, I'll give it. Anyways, Tampa Bay's been on a roll, and if I were a betting man, I would not pick against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. And my weekly family picks, I have Tampa Bay winning this game, which would mean them repeating as NFC South champions. So if Tampa Bay does that, they're gonna be the 4 seed in the NFC. So I look forward to hopefully seeing Tampa Bay in the playoffs. 8-17 square off as the Seahawks host the Steelers. After his best performance of his career, Mason Rudolph will get his 2nd consecutive start. Rudolph versus Smith, the likely quarterback, as in that's Geno Smith versus Mason Rudolph. The likely quarterback battle in this one sounds more like the title of a movie than it does a quarterback matchup, Rudolph versus Smith. Maybe somebody should make that into a movie. But anyways, back to the football game. Much like the earlier preview I gave of the Raiders versus Colts, this is another battle of teams fighting likely for wild card positioning and for their playoff lives. The winner keeps themselves in contention, while the loser is likely 100% eliminated watching the playoffs at home on the couch, just like I'll be watching the playoffs at home on the couch. But this game, I'm going to keep my eyes on, but probably not be watching. It's 2 mediocre teams at best. But maybe as football fans, we get a good matchup that's worth watching. But as for me, I probably won't be watching. But for you Steelers and Seahawks fan, I wish you the best and hope y'all get a good matchup because I'm sure y'all will be tuned in to this one, watching your squads face off. There's 2 more games I want to get to in my Week 17, and to finalize my Week 17 preview. And the first one is going to be the Bengals visiting the Chiefs. Before the season, this was highlighted as a contest expected to be between Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, a rematch of last season's AFC title game, which of course the Chiefs won, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. Spoiler alert, haha, not really, because it already happened in the past. Unfortunately, as I said, many people highlighted this game, had it highlighted on their calendar saying, oh, I can't wait for this matchup. Unfortunately, Joe Burrow's been hurt for much of the year, and he's not playing in this game. So it's a lot less of a highly anticipated game that people were hoping to get. Now, on the flip side of things, Jake Browning, the now Bengals starting quarterback, in case you haven't been watching, Jake Browning's been a nice surprise for the Cincinnati Bengals, throwing for nearly 1,600 yards while combining for 10 total touchdowns since he took over for the injured Mr. Burrow. Now, superstar wide receiver Jamar Chase missed last week's game as his playmaking presence could severely swing things in the favor of the Bengals, potentially, to pull off an unlikely upset. Now, Kansas City is long, and I mean long overdue, in desperate need of a get-right game, as their 9-6 record is far from the dominating defending Super Bowl champs most of us forecasted them to be in their reign of terror that they've had for a long time now. But good news for you Chiefs fans. Good news for you Chiefs fans. I believe you'll finally get that get-right game out of Mahomes and company, and my prediction is the Chiefs win by 17. I just think the Bengals, even though they're 8-7, I think, Jake Browning's been a nice story, but realistically, I think it's going to run out of steam quickly. And even if the Chiefs don't win by 17, I still have the Chiefs winning this game and clinching the AFC West. Last game of this preview that I'm going to mention is the Packers traveling to face the Minnesota Vikings in the Sunday night primetime matchup between two division rivals. Jordan Love has had a heck of a season as he's less than 500 passing yards away from 4,000, along with 3 passing touchdowns away from 30. You told me before the season Jordan Love would throw for more than 4,000 yards along with 30 or more touchdowns, I would have thought you were crazy. But Jordan Love has been a nice quarterback surprise with the massive amounts of quarterbacks who have sustained injuries this year. These two division rivals are clashing in this late season battle. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Vikings lost TJ Hawkinson for the year, and I think they need to end Jordan Addison's season as well, even though he may not be out for the season, but I would sit him the final 2 games. The Vikings are on the far outside looking into the playoffs, and those 2 injuries I think are going to be too much to overcome. I think you need to look at the long-term health of Jordan Addison and rest him up so he can be ready for next season. Now, with that being said, I have Jordan Love and the Packers winning this game in Minnesota, which would also keep the Packers' playoff hopes, their slim playoff hopes, alive. This will wrap up my Week 16 recap and my Week 17 preview. Thank you all for watching, and if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in my next video.